And that's exactly why we didn't create a dating app for neurodivergence. It's not called the dating app for neurodivergence because of that one thing you just said, which is get people mixing with other people and get people feeling included, right? We've already had our own separate classrooms, our own separate teachers, our own separate people we had to go and see after school, and that made us feel different from everyone else and kind of ostracized. So what we wanted to do, and also another thing, it's extremely elitist. I don't know if anyone saw on the BBC last week, but an ADHD waiting list is 8 years now in the UK. So for us to say, well, you have to have a diagnosis to come on our platform, who the hell are we to start judging people and how they want to represent if they can't get the private diagnosis? So we're a dating app for anyone, and it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent, maybe you're just a bit quirky, awkward, whatever it is. If you in any way have felt different throughout any point in your life and you want to come on to meet other people that feel just like you, then that's who we're for. We want to be creating synergies and not silos between people. So, because anxiety and depression are not neurodivergencies, right? And yet we really want to include those people. Imagine if we didn't let people that suffered with social anxiety join our product. Who are we to say who can and can't come in the door? We're not some sort of Mayfair nightclub of mental conditions, right? So we want to be as inclusive as we can be to similar audiences. But that's one of the main reasons we decided not to make this an app for neurodivergence only. So yeah, my name is Jamie. I'm the founder of Mattr, which is a dating app for the different, with a high emphasis on the neurodivergent and people that struggle with poor mental health. My background for the 13 years prior to starting Mattr was in the advertising and tech industries, and we'll come on to kind of why that's important. But I was working very closely with people like YouTube, Mattr, TikTok, and kind of all the big platforms, and seeing how I felt they were very detrimental to certainly people of our brain types. My journey with neurodiversity started at quite a young age when I was diagnosed as dyslexic. I think I was around 7 or 8. And then with what's called AUDHD, which has seen a huge spike and rise now at 31. So I'm 34 now. So that's three years ago. It was kind of that diagnosis and that real kind of awakening, which I suppose a lot of people that are listening to this have, which led me to found Mattr and create something that was different, unique, and allowed people like myself and millions of others around the world to just be empowered by who they are and not feel that they were going to get penalized by either people on the product or from the product itself. And I will come into a little bit more of the depths of how dating app works and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a quick intro to me and a little bit about my background.
That's brilliant, Jamie. Thank you so much, and so many topics there to dive into. I want to kind of just bring you back to kind of the journey. You mentioned kind of that kind of like light bulb moment, but that feeling of the diagnosis of understanding yourself a little bit better. What was that kind of like? Did you say you were diagnosed? What age were you diagnosed with? Because you were diagnosed with, correct me if I'm wrong, dyslexia, and then later on, it was ADHD. Was that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
What was that kind of journey like? What age are we talking about within these?
Yeah. So the dyslexia was quite early on in my life, so around 7 or 8, I think, and it was. That was actually a fairly traumatic experience, where I suppose the other one was more of an empowering one. I mean, I remember the actual moment when I was like, oh, I'm really struggling with something that everyone else finds quite easy. And that was, we used to do this thing called dictation, which is essentially where a teacher reads out paragraph or whatever, a page from a book. It starts off quite easy and then gets harder. And I just really remember like people were freely writing as I was really struggling with the spelling very early on in this kind of dictation. And after that I got pulled into a room and instead of kind of being like nurtured or asked questions about like why I struggled or whatever, it was just typical, this, I'm talking about the mid-90s, right? So it was very much like, you're really far behind where you should be, and this is really bad, and la la la. And that's when kind of the teacher, I think, suggested to my parents that I got, I had dyslexia testing. And back then the word neurodivergent wasn't a thing. I mean, the rise of the word neurodivergent, I would say, is really been over the last kind of 4 to 5 years. I suppose it had a smattering before that, but we were just called special needs kids. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose anyone of kind of a certain generation will know that. So that's when I started to feel different then, and I started to be treated different. You go in different rooms to do exams. You have special allowances. You get this fancy laptop at uni and those types of things. And then I kind of went through my life having every single symptom of ADHD, but no one really bringing it up to me. Just again, mostly just getting in a lot of trouble or not being able to regulate mood and emotion. And it was only really when I kind of got told, and I think anyone who's got ADHD will feel like this, that they get told they have ADHD before they've got a diagnosis or before they know it themselves by people. They go, "Have you got ADHD?" Or you talk a lot. You ever got checked out for ADHD? And I tried actually to get diagnosed for ADHD when I was 24. And yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. I don't know if you want me to go into this story. It's quite.
Yeah, there's a couple of things on this side of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like, I remember speaking to lots of people about this, and their first the first process they would say is, "Okay, I'm going to go and speak to the doctor." Yeah. And then they go to the doctor, and then they feel massively underwhelmed in the sense of the support that was given. And I'm not saying anything against people. I think it's important if if you have a symptom or you think to yourself that that's the correct route. But I'm not saying, from the experience that I've had and spoken to people, that's not always been at least the first initial conversation. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Please do share your experiences with this.
Yeah, I think going to the doctor with anything that's kind of mental, I'm not too sure. I mean, when we talk about doctor, we're talking about NHS GPs here. It's a little bit like one with a toothache, right? They're not trained in that department. You go and see, if you were having a pain in your molars, you wouldn't go and see your GP. You'd go to a dentist, and that's kind of how I feel going to the GP for stuff that's going on inside your mind is. So the way that it worked is I went to the doctor. They kind of looked at me like I had two heads, which I probably think would be easier for them to do something about if I did have two heads, rather than if you have any sort of neurodiversity. And they were like, "Look, you can do this, you can do that," but it was very kind of wishy-washy, and it was kind of scaremongering with waiting lists. And they kind of just suggested that the best thing you can do is go private. So that's what I did. I asked my mum for the money, and I just was like, "Look, I'm really struggling with this. Can you please help me out? Like, it's going to make a big difference in my life." And what they do when you get ADHD tested is they make you fill in this huge set of forms. How often do you feel like this? What do you think about this scenario? And then they essentially give the same questions to someone that's known you for your whole life and get them to fill in the same thing. And then they cross-reference them and see how much that matches up, along with psychiatric testing. Now, I did this at home. I think my mum did the other one. And then in typical ADHD fashion, I just put it in an envelope with a second-class stamp on it and posted it back when it probably weighed half a kilo, right? And it never got to the practice, because that was a large letter or something you need to weigh and stuff like that. And so they said, "Look, it's never turned up. We can't find it in the system. And if you want to get your results, you're going to have to pay to do this again." And obviously, I just went and begged my mum for money. So I just lied to her and told her they said I didn't have it. So I kind of lived then with the shame of that for a very long time, and lived with ADHD all the way from 24 I was when that happened up till 31, where the pandemic was a real catalyst for me, where I was like, I literally can't cope with this anymore. That being, ADHD people are fantastic at masking, and anyone that's got ADHD listening to this now, they will be amazing at kind of fitting in, or being a chameleon, as I call it, into the situations they need to be. And that takes a lot of burden and toll on the body, because we're putting ourselves into a situation where our body is like, it's kind of fight or flight. It's not meant to be acting like this, and yet we do it to fit into a neurotypical world. And, a lot of what can help with that is, just stimulation. So, your job, throwing yourself into job, your friends, going out, working out. I used to play football, and then the pandemic happened, and it's like, oh, you're locked in your kitchen, you're on furlough, no gyms are open. And, and then that's when I was like, yeah, the kind of mental health really went down, and I just had to sort this out. And so, yeah, I went private again and paid for paid to have the psychiatry treatment. And yeah, I was diagnosed actually with AUDHD, which is a hybrid of autism and ADHD. So I always kind of make a joke about going in there for one thing and coming out with two. It was kind of like a 2-for-1. So maybe my diagnosis was half price. But yeah, it was a big moment for me. And I always give an analogy. It's like walking around with a backpack that's full of weights, and then someone just removes that backpack, because you feel like a lot of your life made sense. And a lot of the times where you felt you were being unfairly kind of attacked or punished or not understood, and you always knew it wasn't your fault, you didn't know how to act in another way, that makes a lot of sense. And you kind of think, yeah, it wasn't me doing anything wrong, I didn't mean to do that, it was just how my body was reacting and how my brain is wired up. So I think a lot of people have that that kind of awakening when they get the diagnosis.
Are you learning to be kinder to yourself since then?
For sure. And I think you kind of get this imposter syndrome before you get your diagnosis, where it's like you're reading something, but you don't know if it fully is you, because you haven't been told by someone who has the professionality, the expertise, the knowledge, to be able to tell you, yes, this is that. And I think you learn more about what you're going to be good at, what you're not going to be good at. It's totally, I think ADHD people are very, very good at beating themselves up about stuff that they can't get or grasp. And say with dyslexics as well, I still spell the word believe wrong nearly every single time. Like I write it down. It's just one of these words. I'm just I'm sure you've got some,
social. I cannot spell social. I literally,
it's in my email. Yeah, Mattr.social. Yeah.
Every single time. I write social and it just comes underlined. I put the C in the wrong way or whatever it is.
Yeah,
there's like 3 or 4 keywords that I use daily, and they're always misspelled. So
yeah, I used to work with this company called Initiative, and it was just like, I'm like, I would never ever be able to work at this company because it's too difficult. But yeah, sorry, I've gone off topic. So yeah, there's things that we do where we kind of beat ourselves up about doing, but we don't tend to look at the things we do amazing and we do better than neurotypicals, right? And I think that inherent shame of feeling, oh, everything's my fault or stuff's wrong with me, or why can't I get this simple thing done? Like, how many times has anyone ever like dictated a page from a book after me leaving primary school? Never, right? And yeah, I made this whole thing that I would fail in life because I couldn't do this one task. So yeah, I think that's something that neurodivergents do, but we need to start looking at the stuff we do great, and that's a little bit around the kind of concept of what we're trying to do with Mattr.
Quick word from our sponsors. Promova are a one-stop solution for all of your language learning needs. Now, we all know how difficult and challenging it can be to learn a new language, especially if you have dyslexia. Now, this is where they're different because they are the first platform to introduce a dyslexia mode. And I've got to tell you from firsthand experience, this has been an absolute game changer for me because I've tried to learn languages for many, many years before in different ways. But the fact that they're now making it available and to assist me in certain ways, I can work through these modules with ease. It has been an absolute game changer. Please do check them out. They are used by over 15 million people across the globe. So they are doing incredible work. There is a 50% discount on the premium version in the link below. Please do click on the link and start your learning language journey.
Picture this: mastering a new language in just 10 minutes a day. Too good to be true? With Promova, it's a reality. We are a one-stop solution for all your language learning needs. This innovative platform has all the tools to create a unique learning plan based on your goals and interests. With Promova, you can learn languages through bite-sized lessons, anywhere, anytime. Learn vocabulary you'll actually use in real life. Polish your speaking skills and train your ear with audio lessons. Dive into books for full immersion. Need some personalized guidance? Our expert tutors are just one click away, whether you prefer one-on-one or group lessons. Achieve your language learning goals with Promova.
Do you find, because you're obviously run your own business and that takes I'd say a normal job, quote unquote, where kind of 9 to 5 or whatever that kind of the hours that kind of looks like, running your own business, you have to have this certain drive. Do you find certain strategies where you can kind of, I don't say switch off, because I can never imagine you kind of completely switch off. But have you learned to find some coping mechanisms so you're not just working 23 hours a day?
I think for me,
you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is tough. It is tough, and I feel like, especially if you've got ADHD and you get hyper fixated on things, and your business is something that I'm hyper fixated on. I can't really remember. I mean, to be honest, I've never really had it in my whole life where I've had a quiet mind. I mean, I only found out the other day that neurotypicals, when they get in bed, their mind doesn't have 100 million things going on in it. They just have like blank quietness. I've never really understood that.
Imagine that.
I just didn't even know this. I'm talking, this is maybe like 5 or 6 weeks ago, where I saw someone with ADHD and someone with a neurotypical couple, and they were talking about this particular thing. And the neurodiverse person said, I didn't know that people had like blank minds where they don't have things going on in them. So that blank space is normally filled up with things about the business, good things, bad things. How can we improve? When you run a business, you're the most senior and the most junior person in the company at all times. You have to deal with big investors and do the podcasts and make, hiring decisions and stuff like that. But then you literally have to go and print off stickers from the printing shop, get these little things done, do the grafting. When we first started, we used to go outside like ADHD events and things like that and hand out flyers in like freezing cold. Like, we did one on Brixton High Street. It was like -1. I'm meant to be the founder or boss of this company. I'm there like flyering outside. You have to do that, because it's your business, and any problem is kind of up to you to resolve it. The buck stops with you, right? But in terms of how do I get my brain to stop thinking about work at any point, it's sports. So like I said, I play squash, football, gym, and that's kind of like, because I work from home, I make myself do that, because otherwise I would just get up. My commute is 5 steps to the table that I'm working at now, and I would never actually let my brain do anything else. So I think sport is very, very important. And I would, even if you're not into sport, just getting outside and just moving around is it's definitely the best cure, I think, for busy minds.
Absolutely great advice there, Jamie. And it is. I do a lot of martial arts. It's not as much as I used to, but I always found that with martial arts, it was brilliant because you could just put your phone to one side, and for 2 hours you were you always start in kind of like a meditative state where you have to kind of you kind of ground yourself and you get into that kind of mindset, and then for a couple of hours it's just purely you're just there absorbing it all. So that, and football as much as I can in that sense, but it is anything that's kind of that takes that mind and tries to focus. I almost felt whenever I was doing these things like football or martial arts or anything else, I was almost hyper focusing on it, but in a good way. And it did break that normality of because it's so easy to just pick your phone up or answer that email or jump onto this, jump onto that, but you don't realize, how detrimental it could be to just keep getting into that loop.
No, for sure. I totally agree. And I mean, for me, it's like, I have to have stuff where it's mostly the team stuff, or there's a lot of changing. Like, I could never be a runner because I find running just monotonous and boring, right? My ADHD brain's like, this is just one foot in front of the other, like it's boring. At least, like, if you've got the gym, it's different. I have to do different machines. I can't say no. If it's team sports, you're not in control of what's going on. And so it's finding what you're going to like doing. I mean, some things are for some people, they're not for others. But yeah, I just think find what you like, which is active. And even if you're not the most active person, there's something. It can be ping pong, it could even be darts, it can be whatever it is, and allow your brain to kind of just react to something else rather than you always pushing it to do something.
Absolutely. Jamie, so am I right in saying that you created Mattr in lockdown or around the kind of lockdown period?
The idea for it came in lockdown, and we then did about a year of getting it off the ground. We kind of like building it and working out if it were. I mean, look, people have ideas for businesses all the time. I mean, every single person in the world, I think, has had an idea for a business and gone, I'm going to start this business. And I think entrepreneurs fall into 2 camps. They either fall into the camp of, I want to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to find an idea and I'm going to, and my old housemate, by the way, he's definitely in that category. He's always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur now. He runs a very successful marketing business, but he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Whereas I definitely didn't want to. I didn't have any intention of becoming an entrepreneur the idea came to me. And so I think if you fall into either one of those two camps, the most important thing you can do is find out if anyone else, gives the monkeys about your idea like you do, because everyone, as I said, comes up with ideas of businesses all the time. So we did a lot of kind of research, of talking to our audience, and finding out if this was something actually anyone other than me cared about. It so happens I'm very lucky in life because my sister's a behavioral scientist, and so having a behavioral scientist as a sister is pretty good when you're trying to come up with businesses, because they understand data and they understand kind of survey writing and all that kind of stuff. But there was one moment where I thought, wow, this is going to work, and that was when we did a survey to ask neurodivergent people. We assessed loads of people: neurodivergents, neurotypicals, racial minorities, sexual minorities. But the neurodivergent one was really the catalyst, because we ran a survey saying we were going to create a dating product for the different. It was completely unincentivized, unpaid, everything. We paid an influencer to put it up on her Instagram story for 24 hours and say, these guys are trying to create something for us. Takes 5 minutes, fill it in. And I worked in marketing for 13 years, so I know the pain of getting people to do surveys. Admittedly, that a lot of surveys we were doing for any type of product, from glass cleaner to soft drink or cars or whatever, which people aren't that obsessed with, right? But we had nearly 3,000 people fill that survey in 48 hours. Which, by the way, is an obscene amount of numbers. To give you an idea, the government, that if they do polling for the government, they need 1,000 people to get a rough idea of how the UK is going to vote, right? It's 1,000 people. So we had 3 times the amount that polling companies would use to predict elections and all that kind of stuff. So that amount of data, it really does show you, where it lies. And that was the real kind of like, okay, people care about this, especially neurodivergence, especially that target group. I mean, we had one of the pieces of data for that was 96% of neurodivergents out of 3,000 felt that dating apps didn't understand them, didn't understand who they were. And it's interesting because there's no dating app that targets neurodivergence or speaks to neurodivergence, and yet there's dating apps for everything: religion, diet, sobriety, fetishes, the lot. So
I was quite intrigued because when I knew that kindly you'd agreed to be a guest for us, I started looking into the different types of genres, in the sense of the different dating apps. Literally Googled, and I was amazed, I guess, at how many different, like you said, how many different apps there are out there for this. But it was really interesting when you dive into it and you look from a neurodivergent point of view. There wasn't that, apart from yourself, that was catering for that. So you can from the survey as well, you can definitely see that there is a need there, to be able to help and support. What do you think some of I'm not asking you to share any of the data and stuff like this, but what's the kind of the barriers and that people are finding from a neurodiverse point of view when they're entering into kind of going onto dating apps and that? What kind of problems are they facing?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that we wanted to really address, and this is the big problem for neurodivergence. Is let's take the mainstream dating apps. Okay, let's just take the mainstream ones. Okay, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Plenty of Fish, those types of things. There's 2 things that are wrong with them. There's purpose and there's product, right? So from a purpose point of view, they don't promote a safe space of vulnerability or acceptance, right? Because it's so competitive. And there's a theory called the paradox of choice, which is essentially like the more choice you get, the more negative you think about your options. And I give you an analogy of this. If you go to a restaurant and they've got like 50 things to order, you think, how can they cook all this food? It's going to be crap. If you go to a high class restaurant, they have like 4 mains, right? And you think, wow, the quality is going to be good. The chef is taking care of this. The product's going to be good. Like if you go and see 50 things on a menu, you're like, the food's bad, right? And the food could be amazing. You don't know that, but because you've given so much choice, and these apps give you so much choice, right, that you're overwhelmed with like everything that's going on. I mean, Tinder's essentially unlimited if you live in a city. If you put in, I'll date anyone from 25 to 45, and I live in London, and I'll go 20, 30 miles for a day. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of people that you could potentially be swiping through. So from a neurodivergent point of view, one, they're not creating an environment where you can be vulnerable because it's so competitive that everyone's trying to be perfect, right? Everyone's being perfect because you're one of hundreds of thousands on those products. And the second side of things is that whole system of swiping, competitiveness is completely overwhelming and draining on your mental health. And if you've got ADHD, that can be dangerous for a couple of reasons. One, it can make you have burnout because you just won't stop, right? You'll just keep swiping, especially during the pandemic. You're just there like, I've got nothing to do today. So now, because they're monetized so heavy, and you run out of your likes and you run out of your super swipes and all this type of stuff, it can lead you into a financial problems. So neurodivergent people can go into a space which isn't welcoming to them, that has a whole audience of people that are hyper competitive, that don't understand them, with a product that can really damage their mental health, which can be overwhelming. And then they can come out of it 50 quid, 20, £100 lighter, because they're just in this hamster wheel. And I think, this is my opinion. There's no study on this. I feel, as an ex-user of dating and someone that worked very, very closely with the social media platforms, I feel that dating apps are by far the biggest dopamine roller coaster of any product, because you're getting validation from someone which says, I like you, I think you're attractive, I like your profile. And if you've got, dopamine regulation problems like I do, you're just going to go bang, it's going to go straight up like that. It's going to be like when you shoot up in a roller coaster. But then you start talking, they start slowing down on the replies, they don't want to meet up with you, it's coming down and down and down and down and down. And then you're regulating your mood. It's so difficult on these products. So that's why we went into that market, where I was like, look, this has to change. I couldn't find anything that was, like I said, there's one app in America called Hickey. It's only for people with autism, right? It's not like a whole neurodivergent umbrella. I couldn't find anything out there where, it wasn't just I was looking for something about neurodiversity. I was looking for people talking about what's going on in their mind. And you would think like that would be a huge thing, especially during the pandemic, when you've seen so many people lose their jobs, people dying, mental health, starved of close friendships. You think something would be there, but there wasn't. And so I thought, well, and this is kind of crazy, I was like, well, let's do it then. Let's create that product.
It's really fascinating what you mentioned about the kind of the dopamine fix, I guess, in the sense of, and we get this through any kind of online usage, for our social media, take TikTok, for instance, where it's just fast paced. It's like the minute you get this kind of couple of seconds of lull, it's straight onto the next one. It's that side of it. And do you think that the apps have kind of captivated that element of this from the actual swiping? Because it's interesting, isn't it, how we use it? I remember reading a study years and years ago with regards to kind of how social media works, and the way that we hold the phone, the way that we scroll, and the way that they market it in the way that we would always scroll up in this sense. And now it's obviously with the thumb and scrolling right within the app side of it. Do you think there's a lot of psychology that goes into these apps?
100%, to
make sure that someone has that continuous, especially when we're talking about money involved as well. To like the psychology side of it there must have been huge amounts of work that's gone into it from these big global kind of other apps.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it. I know it. I mean, I worked in the industry for 13 years, so I can tell you firsthand, as someone that worked there, that's exactly what they do, because everything's done on what we call. If you go and sit in a room with a big social media company or a dating app company, they talk about something called engagement, right? It's how engaged you are, the monthly, or activity or engagement. They'll say it like, how monthly active users, daily active users, you can change the word active to addicted, and it means exactly the same thing, monthly addicted users. What are our addiction rates this month? You can just change that A from active to addicted, because it means essentially the same thing. How do we get these numbers of active users, addicted users up? And that is by keeping you in a perpetual cycle of what's behind the next door. And that's the same with dating as it is on TikTok. TikTok is fantastic at being like, oh my, you don't have a clue, right? It could be 1 minute it's how do you cook the most amazing carbonara, to the next slide, the next video is, here's a UFO sighting. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of, I have no idea what's going on. And what's happening is the algorithm is always working out what you like, what you're engaged in, what your dwell time is, what you're liking, what you're following, what you're commenting on. And then it's building up this customer profile while also chucking in random ones to keep you like going. Because if let's say you're really into sports cars, and every single video of sports cars, you'll get bored, because you're like, oh, where's the thing about how the pyramids are made, or whatever it is. And that's how they keep you going. So, and when you chuck in monetization into that, so obviously TikTok is free to use, but if you've noticed now, if you're a TikTok user, there's far more ads on TikTok than there is on, on anything else. And that's how they make their money, is through ads, but also through e-commerce, right? So, people who are, masquerading as influencers or whatever, who are selling products on there, and then TikTok are taking a commission because it goes through their back end and they get money out of it that way. And so that's what they need to do. They need that. If no one's using their product all the time, they're not making any ad content, and they're not selling any products, and they don't really have a business. Now, if we look at dating, it's exactly the same thing. They want you to think what's behind the next door, keep you swiping. So, as a business, we thought, well, how do we create a product which is going to be ethical? It's not going to damage the mental health of our users, but also it's going to make us money because we're not a charity. And that's where you have to have ingenuity. You have to think outside the box, So right now we give you 6 people a day that we handpick for you, and we tell you why we've matched you with them. Okay. So it says, like, let's say that I see your profile, right, Darren? It's going to say, Darren likes X, Y, and Z, you like X, Y, and Z, and we think you two should go on a date because of, cocktails, sports, martial arts, or whatever the categories are. Okay. So how do we then thought to ourselves, well, how do we extend this customer journey? Because the number one thing people think about dating apps from every target group is they're overwhelming. And that's neurotypicals and neurodiverse alike. They feel dating apps are overwhelming. There's too much choice and they provide no value. The business model of a dating app is to provide you with chance, not value, right? So you buy a premium subscription to Tinder or Bumble. They're not promising you're going to get 12 matches a month or whatever it is, because they can't. It's a double-sided marketplace. It means that you have to match with me, I have to match with you, and then we can facilitate a conversation. But you can have the best profile in the world. If no one wants to match with you, it means nothing, right? So you're paying for chance. You don't pay for value. And dating apps are one of the only products in the world where the better their product is, the more customers they lose. Because if they're matching everyone up with their perfect matches every 5 seconds, that means that they're losing their customers, right? So we thought to ourselves, and that's called churn, by the way. And you can have positive churn where everyone goes around and tells everyone we met on Hinge, we met on Tinder, we met on Bumble. And so you're getting that brand recognition. But we then thought to ourselves, okay, so how can we provide value, slow down churn, and create a better experience for all the users while still making money? And so we've done what we think is really revolutionary, which is extend the customer journey to help you with the actual dating and help you getting ready for dates, but also going on the dates. So within our product, you have access to relationship coaching, relationship therapists, people that will help you build your profile. We have specific ND ones in there as well. We have bars and restaurants. We have experiences, museums, crazy golf. We have loads of cosmetic sections so you can get ready for dates. We have hair care, soap, all everything that can help you with your dating life. And that's all in there with the discount. So the user, we're unmonetized at the minute, right? Because we're an early stage business, so everything's free, by the way, at the minute. It won't be in the future, so this is your chance to go and get some of these things for free. So all of those products are discounted, 20% off, 30% off, 2 for 1s, and they're exclusive discounts to us. You can't get them anywhere else. So we're helping you with your dating game, and we're always providing you value. Let's say you don't get any matches 1 month. Okay, great. But that's a relationship coach. Why don't you go and speak to them and ask them why that is? Why don't you have a look at your profile, with that person? So we're always trying to help the user. And it makes the whole thing less overwhelming because this isn't built into the product yet, but it's actually going to be able to create the dates for you in the future. So let's say you and I we've put cocktails as one of our things. We have a cocktail making class and a cocktail bar on the product. So we can actually just bring you that date. You'll be able to book it on platform. So everything we've done there is talking to the users. I think a lot of people just, they don't do enough research with what people actually want and how do you make your product different and better. You think, okay, everyone's doing swiping. We're going to do neurodivergent swiping. It would have been easy for us to go like, we're just going to make it out for neurodivergence and we make it swiping. But we thought, no, let's make something a bit different. Our whole mantra is date different. So we should be the ones doing it as well.
Absolutely. And I love those, how so much has gone into it, in the sense of the pre-preparation for, for the wellness of the person. Because when we're looking at someone that is, everyone's journey is different from why they've downloaded the app and they're going on to this. They could be just coming out of a relationship. They could be, there's so many different things. They could be new to relationships. There's so many different, pinpoints of their life. And again, it could be for looking after that kind of mental wellness on that side of it. And if we're looking from a neurodiverse point of view, the overwhelming side of it, of trying to deal with that as we talking about so many different things going on in our minds,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to deal with that situation and then learn something new and then meet someone in this side of it. And I guess, having all of those different attributes to kind of help and guide on that journey. I noticed as well on one of the great things on your side, you have is it an honesty box?
Yeah.
Could you just tell us a little bit? I was really intrigued by this side of it, because it really, I thought how amazing just be able to put that on there where you can tell I'll let you tell our listeners about it.
Yeah, so actually it's interesting. So we developed the honesty box 18 months ago, and a huge report just came out by Plenty of Fish, who are owned by Mattr, who are the big dating conglomerate, which said 93% of people, the number one thing they look for in a partner is emotional vulnerability. Right. So they've done this huge study with all these people, massive company, and they've said that 93% of people are looking for emotional vulnerability. And I mean, we could have told you that 18 months ago when we developed Honesty Box. So we're way ahead of what these massive companies are doing, because I suppose they don't want to fiddle around with their business models. But essentially, Honesty Box is two boxes. One that's like you'll love, and this is a chance for you to be unashamedly, shout about yourself, blow your trumpet. And it can be something like a skill that, like I'm great at tennis, or I'm a black belt in karate, or whatever. Or it could be something really intrinsic, which is I'm really empathetic, I'm a great listener, or I'm a real go-getter type of person. And I feel like people don't want to sing their own praises, right? But we give you this chance and we make you do that first. So you're like, okay, great. Like I can do this. I can write this. And it gives you a bit more confidence to do the second box, which is you're going to need to know this. So we don't write, this is a negative, this is something bad, but it's going to say, you're going to need to know this. And look, you don't have to you can put anything in here as deep as you want to make it, right? We read, I've read some of them that are like, quite hard hitting, where it's like, I have this condition, you better read up on it before you go on a date with me, like that type of stuff. And we give you the chance to do that. But it could just be like, my timekeeping is absolutely terrible. Please tell me the date's 15 minutes, earlier than it actually is. I might be there on time. But we make everyone do this kind of like, here's where, and it's kind of like a trade-off, right? So you say like, okay, if you find something that you're like, okay, I'm not really too sure about the negative one. Oh, but that's offset by this positive one, or whatever it is. I'm very good at timekeeping. I think my ADHD autism stuff fights with each other, and I'm really glad that the autism wins in the timekeeping one, because autistic people, they like routines, they like to be on time, so I'm very a good timekeeper. My partner is not. That's definitely her worst quality, I would say, is timekeeping. But because I'm good at it, I don't mind helping her and doing that stuff. So there's this thing called helpers high. So essentially, helpers high is when you help someone, you get dopamine from it, and we try and promote that a lot through the product. So it's like when you help someone with a buggy down the stairs at the tube station, you feel good about it. You've done something good to help someone that needed you, and without you, that would have been in a difficult situation. So sometimes with dating, if you're vulnerable, you can actually get someone that's really good at the thing you're bad at to reach out and be like, hey, actually, I'm really great at timekeeping, or I'm really good at this. Maybe I can help you with that. You on the other side think, oh, this guy or girl are being really kind to me, and that's nice, and I feel good towards them, and you feel good towards that person because you've helped them. You've got your helpers high. So, but if you don't create the environment or the safe space to be able to do that and say, look, everyone's doing this, right? So don't feel scared about doing it. Then people won't do it. And so people go to us, what's stopping anyone talking about these mental things on Tinder or Hinge? Well, they can if they want, but they're not gonna be in a safe space to do so. They're not gonna have people that are gonna understand what it is that they're talking about. So that's why we have the honesty box, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite feature.
I think it ultimately, like you said, it breaks those barriers down, so you can be honest about it. And I guess you mentioned about bigging yourself up, and I guess it's from like a British thing. I don't know if if you listen to this in different parts of the world, it seems a very British thing for us to not say how great we are and amazing and these things, but it's an incredible exercise to really kind of take stock of what your qualities are and what you can offer, in the sense of how nice of a person you are, what you're into, and these kind of things. So I think it was a really nice add into this side of it. What do you think the kind of, does it allow people from a neurodiverse point of view that go onto your kind of platform and go for the dates? Have you had any experience of people that have tried different apps in that sense, and now they can be themselves a little bit more because they're not having to put that persona on? Have you had experience of that?
Yeah, I think an interesting thing is that the average dating app user has 3.8 dating apps, right? So let's just say it's 4 because you can't have 0.8 of an app, but that's just how the numbers work. And they use them in different ways, right? So you might have one where you're being much more open and honest and you're talking about neurodiverse side of things. You might have one, maybe you're like really into sports, right? So maybe you've got like your dating app for people that are into sports. Like I said, there's apps for literally everything out there, for if you want to meet someone that's in your community. And then you might just have your like generic one that you kind of just have for the sake of having, because you really want to meet someone. It's a numbers game. So we do have people that use other apps and come to us, but we were never an option before. I mean, we're still not an option to however like 70% of population of the UK, because we're only based in London, because we have a model, unfortunately, which means that you need people to be near each other to use the product, and therefore you can't just say I'm going to launch throughout the whole UK, because we don't have any people on the ground in Aberdeen. We don't have any marketing up there. So you have to, unfortunately, go either, city by city or area by area. So, a lot of people in the UK don't. I mean, there's 4,000 people on our UK waiting list right now, that want our product, and they don't get marketed to, right? There's no advertising outside London. So it's either word of mouth or organic social that they've seen the product and put themselves on the waiting list. So I feel like, I think this is interesting, and I'm gonna go a tiny bit off topic here, but kind of similar, which is when you have a product which is based around accessibility, it starts with people that need it. So you have like people that need the product. They're like, oh my God, I need this. This is my community. I need this. This is my people. And then what happens is, as time goes on, more people start to talk about it. You get to people that actually want it. And that's what we call the laggards, the people that come into your product later on. And what's interesting about that is accessibility tools and accessibility programs, stuff like that were developed for specific people, have gone mainstream so often. And I'll give you the most common one, which is texting. So if I ask you, Darren, do you call or text on your phone more? Like, do you use texting or phone
I use voice notes mostly.
Voice notes more than typing.
I use typing, voice notes, and then the actual calling side of it is probably less.
So I reckon if you ask most people, like, what's the most common form of communication on the phone, they would say through text, WhatsApp, Absolutely. Texting, email. I mean, that in comparison to me calling is like 95 and 5, if not more. Same. Now, texting was developed as an accessibility tool. So texting was an accessibility tool developed by a handset company for people that were hard of hearing to use their product. And then it actually became like, this is the way that the masses want to communicate, right? It's the same with things like Siri. Their voice activation controls for accessibility. And we feel that, we're going to have all these people that have anxiety, that are neurodivergent, everything. But the whole point of what we're trying to do is create this empowered community that are vulnerable, that will open up, and then that will mean that they'll meet better partners. So we actually think in the future that this will become a lot more mainstream than it is now. And then the people that are using 3.8% of dating apps might think, actually, I just need to use my 1 or my 2.
That's absolutely incredible. So many different things there, and you mentioned about the text inside of it. I wouldn't have even thought of it as an accessibility side of it, but it's like those kind of, you see those memes, don't you, where someone as you get that Teams call noise, someone's like, oh my goodness, someone's trying to call me, and you're like, so I guess as a generation now we have just been, I'll just shoot a quick message off. And even, I mentioned voice notes purely if I'm out and about, then I'll send the voice notes. The thing I guess I find that I don't think we've evolved too much is the email, because it's really, I always find with emails is that you almost have this persona on an email that you don't necessarily on a text. But I think they're important because they send documents and they're for the importance. But it's that level of importance of an email. It's, even using terminology like kind regards, best wishes. You wouldn't necessarily use this.
Hope this finds you well. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope this finds you well. And in a WhatsApp side of it. So I think the email is kind of, maybe that'll go through a stage. I'm not too sure, but it's nice to have those alternatives. But it's just interesting to think of the texting as a, the reason why. Yeah, the accessibility side of it. What would you like to see going forward for Mattr, Jamie? What's your kind of vision in the sense of the inclusivity side of it and being able to help people going forward? What would you like to see?
I mean, we'll carry on the theme of accessibility right now, and I'll give you some stats and data points which will really shock you. So currently, well, actually, this isn't currently. This is from 2 years ago, so these numbers are wrong. But this is from a couple of years ago, right? So PwC, which is PricewaterhouseCoopers, with one of the big 4 audit firms, accountancy firms, they estimate that the UK loses 249 billion, and I haven't said that wrong, a year due to in sales, by the way, in sales of products and services due to inaccessibility, right? I wrote something the other day when the government changed over, and I said, hey, Keir Starmer and Labour Party, if you want some tax receipts, then why don't you start making stuff more accessible? 75% of people will use a product that is more accessible if they need it. That's people that need the accessibility. And actually 42% of people that don't need accessibility would rather use a product that has accessibility because it's helping other people use the product. So, we are 1% of accessibility in everything, and for instance, there's certain websites I just won't use. Like anything that's made by Reach own the Mirror and things like that. Their websites are just so disgusting and overwhelming, and I can't navigate them, that I just won't click on one of their links. Like, you are just losing. You want to serve me ads and make money, like you can't, because I'm just, I'm not going to click on any of your links because they're inaccessible to me. And so we really want to, our industry is worth around 28 billion, or forecast to be 28 billion, I think, in a couple of years. So if we can be the market leader in our industry for accessibility, we can start chipping away at that number. That's really what I want to do. And we've actually just pitched the government grant company, which is called Innovate. So they fund startups and businesses like that are trying to do different things, and we've actually pitched them a whole strategy for the most accessible dating product with AI that's going to have prompt readers in there, where you can have bionic reading if you're dyslexic, so it can help change the text around. So it's going to just create this amazing environment for people that need the accessibility, and obviously no one's doing that, right? And so we want to really change the game from accessibility from our point of view, and we want to get the product all throughout as far as we can get it. Look, we have people in America on our waiting list, and how the hell have they ever heard about us? I mean, like, we don't market over there. It's probably organic, social, or word of mouth. So we understand this product is needed far and wide. Right now we're constrained due to how much we're in an investment round at the minute. We're nearly done on that, thank goodness, because it's been taking up a lot of my time, but we're nearly done on that, 80%. But we need this money to keep the wheels moving and to get this product out there, because we're at the tip of the iceberg on what we can do. Dating is so important, because I think when you talk to people about running a dating app, they just automatically revert to Tinder, and they think hookups, and they think low value, right? And they don't understand that what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people be happier. We're trying to combat loneliness. I mean, loneliness is a bigger killer of young people than diabetes and obesity, right? And yet our product is trying to resolve that. People in relationships are on average 25% happier just by being in a relationship than they are if they were on their own. So, we're not, I don't ask people to invest in a dating app. I ask people to invest in other people's happiness. So, this isn't a product which I look at and think, oh, this is kind of some low rent hookup thing. That's not what we're doing. We're here to facilitate connection for some of the people that have been the most ostracized, most, misunderstood and left out for, of these types of things since they were children. It's a building up of trauma, for all this time, through exclusion of, exclusion from the classroom, to do exams in different rooms, not fitting in with your peer groups. Why are these people not allowed to be in love and have relationships just like everyone else? So that's what we're trying to do, and that's kind of the aim of the game for Mattr, is to get this out throughout the UK and then hit up the US and the EU.
You mentioned about loneliness, and that is absolutely massive for all the age gap in that sense, but the isolation side of it is massive as well. Purely, you touched on the fact of being put in separate classrooms, and then all these different things, and I've experienced that firsthand. And I think anything that we can do to kind of combat that, to actually not even like create a level playing field, but just actually make someone feel that they are worthy, worth something, is as my blessing every single time.
Well, I think that's a really, that's exactly why we didn't create a dating app for neurodivergence. It's not called the dating app for neurodivergence because of that one thing you just said, which is get people mixing with other people and get people feeling included, right? We've already had our own separate classrooms, our own separate teachers, our own separate people we had to go and see after school, and that made us feel different from everyone else and kind of ostracized. So what we wanted to do, also another thing, it's extremely elitist. I don't know if anyone saw on the BBC last week, but an ADHD waiting list is 8 years now in the UK. So for us to say, well, you have to have a diagnosis to come on our platform, who the hell are we to start judging people and how they want to represent if they can't get the private diagnosis? So we're a dating app for anyone, and it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent, maybe you're just a bit quirky, awkward, whatever it is. If you in any way have felt different throughout any point in your life and you want to come on to meet other people that feel just like you, then that's who we're for. You know, we want to be creating synergies and not silos between people. So, because anxiety and depression are not neurodivergencies, right? And yet we really want to include those people. Imagine if we didn't let people that suffered with social anxiety join our product. You know, who are we to say who can and can't come in the door? We're not some sort of Mayfair nightclub of mental conditions, right? So we want to be as inclusive as we can be to similar audiences. But that's one of the main reasons we decided not to make this an app for neurodivergence only.
And I think that inclusivity side of it is second to none, Jamie. Jamie, we've come to the end of our time, and I cannot thank you enough for one, what you're doing for the community, and all of your expertise and experience that you're bringing in, and sharing your lived experience in this, and I'm sure it's helped massively to be able to to make this go. And I honestly wish you the very best.
Just to thank you as well, Darren, for inviting me on here, and allowing me to kind of tell a bit of my story and the business as well. So thank you.